Today we're learning about value scales. What is a value scale? Well, they're these guys, and you've probably seen them at the paint store. It's where we have a color, and we go from a high intensity color that's really dark, maybe to a really light, or I go from one color to another color, or I can go from black to white with all the colored grays in the middle. So you can use a ton of different art supplies to make a value scale. It doesn't have to be the art supply that I'm using. Any art supply you have at your house is totally okay. I'm actually going to make value scales using a lot of different art mediums so that you can see what they all look like. If you have a couple of different art mediums at your house, go ahead and experiment or pick and choose which one you like best. So for the art materials you'll need today to make a value scale: white paper. If you're painting, a selection of paintbrushes, paper towel, and some water. I'm using tempera paint. I pre-poured out some red paint for today's activity, and I also have a watercolor palette. I've also pulled out markers, oil pastels. I have a tin here full of colored pencils and crayons. Now, you can make your value scales however you want on your paper. They don't have to be perfect, but I am going to show you how to use masking tape to make perfect rectangles on your paper. It's also a fun reveal when you pull it away from your paper. Again, this is totally optional. I don't think I'd recommend using the clear tape that you might have at your house for like present wrapping, but once again, you can try and use it and see what happens. Okay, artists, let's get started making some value scales. The first step is I'm going to make some rectangles using the tape. So I don't want the tape super sticky. If the tape is really sticky, then it's going to pull my paper off with it. So in order to make it less sticky, what I want to do is I want to take a sweater or maybe my pants if I'm wearing a soft material and lay the tape on the material, pull it off so that the tape has some texture to the back of it. You might have to do this a couple of times, and you're making the tape less sticky when you do it this way. And then I'm gonna lay my tape down on the paper, and I'm only going to put a little bit, so I've only covered a little bit of the paper, and I'm gonna do that all the way around, making my tape less sticky. So you can see how much tape is hanging off. If you want to save that tape, if you're worried you won't have enough, you can go ahead and cut off the extra that you won't need and use it for the other side of your paper, which might be a good idea not to waste tape. So all I'm going to do is cover all 4 edges of my paper with the tape. This step is totally optional, just a teeny tiny bit, because I'm going to do a reveal at the end so that all of my rectangles have nice, clean, crisp edges. When you're doing this, make sure you press down really good on the edges. All right, so I'm going to work on doing the top and bottom, and I'll be right back when that's done. I spent some time de-sticking my tape, and now I'm going to go ahead and show you how to finish your rectangles. So my paper already has the tape all the way around the edge, just a little bit, not a ton. So now I'm just going to put the tape down so that it's going across my paper horizontally. I'm pressing down on the edges really good, and I'm going to do this the entire way down my paper. Now I have 6 art mediums that I want to use today. If you're not using 6 art mediums, then you don't need to worry about making 6 different rectangles for your value scales. But I want to make sure that my paper has enough space for all my value scales. And I want to do some fun lettering in the middle describing what I'm doing today. So I've got 3 up here, 3 down here, and some space in the middle. Now, if you've de-sticked your tape, then, and if you don't like how wide or thin some of your rectangles are, you can go back, peel up the tape carefully, and try again. Ooh, grab some paper here. If that's okay, it's going to be underneath my tape, so that's totally okay. I peeled it up a little bit too fast. Maybe use this as a warning not to peel up yours super fast, like I just did. Okay. All right. So I really like the way my paper looks. It's ready for the different mediums of value scales. And on each value scale, I'm going to use a different color. Not surprisingly, mine is going to be rainbow. I'll start with red at the top and work my way to violet at the bottom. I know I have 7 rectangles here. This middle one, I'm going to be writing out value scales using some fun hand lettering. Okay, so grab your first art medium, whatever it's going to be, and we'll get started doing a value scale. I'm going to start out with the tempera paint and the watercolor palette on my paper first. So what I'm going to do is I want the most intense color over here, and I want it to be very light over here. These are tint value scales. They are one of the easier ones to make when you're talking about a value scale. So I'm going to paint the strongest intensity of color over on the left side. And then I'm cleaning all the paint off my brush. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just using water, and I'm going to kind of blend it out a little bit. When I get about another third of the way, clean off my brush again, just using water, blend it out some more. Clean off my brush, just using water. So each time when I'm grabbing paint and bringing it over, I'm only grabbing from the section closest to, so that it's getting less and less paint each time till I have a very light color. Now I can always go back and add more paint if I want to make an area darker, so that I go from the darkest, most intense hue to a very, very light tint. I'm going to bring this up a little bit closer so that you can see that there is a little bit of pink right here. It's very, very, very light, and that's exactly what I wanted. Okay, now I'm going to switch to my watercolor tray, and I'm going to be using orange. So I'm just waking up the color a little bit with some water. And just like I did with the tempera paint, I want to paint the darkest, most intense version of this color in the first, whatever I decide, how many tints that I want. In this one, I got about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can sort of pick out 5 different versions of red. If you only want to pick out 3, then you want to bring the color over farther. So I've cleaned off my brush. I'm just using water, bringing it over, and I'm going to repeat this. Now, watercolor isn't as strong as tempera paint, so I am going to have to build up this color a few times to get a darker version of orange. Now, a lot of times with watercolor, you're going to have to let it dry in between layers, but I like working fast with the value scale so that I don't get a ton of lines between my sections of color. So I want to start off dark and intense, or as dark as intense as I possibly can get. I want to move to a medium. And if you feel like your brush is, the color is too dark, just go in and clean your brush off and start again. I'm just using water to kind of blend those colors together until I get a very, very light version of orange. So this is called a tint because it looks like we've added white to the orange. You can always go back and add more color to make it darker, but you can't go back and take away. Okay, so I've got the dark, intense orange. I can see that color. I've got this color right here, so that's 2, 3, and 4. All right, now I'm gonna switch it up and I'm going to grab some different art mediums. So I've got oil pastel and marker next. Okay, so we're making a rainbow because I love rainbows. I like the way they look. I'm using yellow marker. This one's actually called Laser Lemon, so we're gonna stick with yellow. And in this one, I want to paint color on really, and then I want to press down a little bit less as I go. So this is maybe medium. All right, so I've colored this section 2 or 3 times to make sure it's really dark, and I've lightly colored this section, leaving lots of white. Now I'm going to start drawing lines further apart so that it appears lighter and darker going this way, lighter going this way, because the color is spread further and further apart. And that is a way to show value scale using only lines. We're going to experiment with some other ways down here. So now I'm going to switch to green, and I'm going to show you cross hatching. So in the first area, I'm going to color dark like I would. This is an oil pastel. It's got strong color. You can blend these though too, but for the purpose of making a value scale, this goes straight to super light, so it's not very helpful. Okay, so I'm going to start some cross hatching by drawing lines going in one direction and lines going in the other direction. I want to make sure that they're very close together. Now, in true cross hatching, I would have filled this box up with lines going in both directions, but I would have drawn so many that it would have filled the box anyways, so it's a little bit of a cheat to do it that way. Then as I go, I want to make my lines spread further and further apart so that it appears lighter as I'm going. So you're going to make your lines further and further apart as you go. And maybe even you could make them a bit lighter so that you've got values going from very dark, sort of dark, medium to light. All right, I'm going to switch my mediums. I'm going to go to crayons and colored pencil. Let's see, let's do blues. I'm going to color dark and hard. And then as you go, you have more control when using a colored pencil. You can actually color a little bit lighter and a little bit lighter still until you get to very, very light. In the value scale. And then the last I'm going to use is violet or purple. And then here, I'm going to do the same thing as I did with colored pencil, but with crayon. And before I finish, I just want to mention one quick thing, that you can actually turn your marker, if you have it, into paint. So all this is a wetted paintbrush, so just plain water. And I'm just dragging it across, and it will turn your marker into paint, so you can actually experiment with a value scale. Okay, so same thing down here as I did with the colored pencil. I'm going to color really hard and dark, getting all those little white spaces. And then I'm going to switch to medium. And then I'm going to let up and color lighter and lighter as I go to the end until I'm hardly coloring at all. And there you have it. 6 different ways to create a tint value scale. I'm going to be adding some hand lettering in here. So what I want to do is very carefully and slowly peel up the tape. Now, we've already learned from my mistake, if you do this very quickly, it will rip your paper. So I'm going to do mine, and I'll be right back with some hand lettering right here to spell out value scales. All right, so what I'm going to do is in here, I'm going to be writing my value scales, and I'm going to draw some lines for my block letters that just go straight across my paper. And my letters I'm writing in pencil are going to start at this top line and end at this bottom line. And they're just there to kind of guide me as I draw, so that all of my letters are the same height. And you can draw these however you want. I'm kind of connecting all of mine because I'm worried about space. And I'm going to write it in pencil first, and then I'm going to come back with a Sharpie and trace all of my pencil lines. So I did value, and now I'm going to oops. Okay. Now I'm going to take my Sharpie and I'm going to trace over all of my letters. Now, something fun that you could do while you're tracing these letters, you can color them in, or you can give them fun designs and color them in. Really, the possibilities are endless with black letters because you can personalize them and make them your own. I always like to tell my students that you want to start with pencil and do Sharpie last. That way you can go and erase any mistakes that you might have made. You can also make changes along the way. And then after they're all traced, the last step is going to be to erase. All the extra pencil lines. Didn't have room for an extra S, but that's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then the last step here is I'm going to get my big giant eraser and I'm going to erase all the extra pencil lines really quick. Okay, this looks pretty awesome, guys, for learning value scales the first lesson. Great job if you made it all the way through. I can't wait to see what you do. Make sure you tag me on social media, or if you're in my Google Classroom, that you turn this in. Okay, bye, guys.